point is they basically need to enforce regulations that are already on the books, and those will help a lot of the issues regarding broker fraud immediately. And drivers, like I said, have been advocating for that for a long time. They made their point well known at a Mid-America trucking show just a couple years ago. There was a listening session there with FMCSA, and that thing would have lasted 2 days if they had allowed it to.
Landline Now, welcome back. It's the first of the month, and that means another issue of Landline magazine will be making its way to truckers' mailboxes across the nation. We'd like to give you a sneak peek inside the issue before it comes to your door, and here to do that are Landline magazine senior editor Mark Schremmer and magazine staff writer SJ Munoz. Guys, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Good to be here, Mark.
Let's start with some of the technical stuff here, but it's really important. And this is something we've talked about on the show before, but the magazine's going to go into some real depth here. And I kind of looked at what you've got coming in the magazine. That is the government's regulatory agenda, which sounds oh so boring. But if you look at what it's doing, it's not, is it?
No, it's really not. And the Department of Transportation and other departments, they put out these, I think, about twice a year, and it really gives kind of a roadmap for what's coming on the regulatory scene. And as truckers are well aware, there's never a shortage of, rulemakings and regulations that are being cooked up either by lawmakers or by regulatory agencies. And this really kind of allows you to take a look and say, okay, what are they planning for the rest of this year? What are they planning for next year? And how will this affect me as a driver? How will this affect me, as a motor carrier for the foreseeable future, well into 2030 and beyond that? But yeah, it's very important, and we break down probably about 8 or 9 of kind of the top ones to kind of look at and give you an idea of when's going to be a chance to comment, when's a chance to influence this rulemaking, and sometimes oppose.
Well, and one of the things that I kind of like about it is if you look at this thing over time, and here's a good example is our first issue we're going to talk about, speed limiters, that this thing has been on the regulatory agenda over and over and keeps getting delayed. And maybe that tells us that all the pressure that truckers and others are putting on the government is making FMCSA maybe think twice.
I think 100% with this issue. I mean, we already have confirmation from the previous FMCSA administrator, Robin Hutchison, that one of the reasons that the speed limiter rulemaking was delayed previously was because they received 15,000 comments, and they are required to read every single one of those comments before they can move on to the next step. And that was one of the things that held them up. I mean, you have 15,000 comments. You have the majority of those comments coming from individual truck drivers, and most of those largely opposing it. So, this is, again, I know we've mentioned this fact before, but I think it's worth mentioning again, is that, the speed limiter rulemaking is not one that was directed by Congress. FMCSA has chose to do this on their own, and when you have that many truck drivers, the people being affected by it, telling you that this is a bad idea, makes it even more difficult to justify, and it slowed the process. So, and whether this is a regulation you like as a truck driver or a regulation you don't like from each one of these, it just is a great example of why it's important to comment, why it's important to be a part of the process. And, like I said, sometimes it can slow things down, which might be enough to actually end it altogether.
Well, and of course, another thing that we learn in looking at this, and it's important to know, is kind of where they're headed on this. And they have kind of telegraphed kind of where they're headed in terms of what they want to do. I mean, in fact, we've got safety advocates that are pushing for this to be as low as 60 miles an hour. Yeah,
and that's the thing. So just to kind of back up where we're at a little bit, when they released an advance notice of proposed rulemaking, and through all of that time, even though speed limiters, like you mentioned, has been on agendas for years and years and years, they've never actually unveiled a proposal for a top speed. Those safety advocates, as you say, have wanted it as low as 60 miles an hour, which when you think about speed differentials, it's not, it doesn't take too long to realize, oh man, we have speed limits out there, 80, 85 miles an hour in portions of the highway, and we're really going to make cars and trucks that drastically different. But they've also thrown around 65, 68, 70. We won't know what top speed they're actually going for until this is released. And just to give you an idea of how much this has been delayed, originally previous of these agendas had this coming out in June of 2023, then December of 2023, May of 2024, and now it's May of 2025. And then you also think about, we got an election between then. We have new leadership at FMCSA. We don't have a permanent administrator there. You got bills in Congress going through that are trying to stop this. So it's going to be really interesting as we move forward to see, where this goes. But as of now, be prepared, because I know every time I talk to a truck driver, they'll tell me that this is something they're against. So, keep your eye on the prize. It's looking good to stop this, but it's certainly not over. So, next time there is a chance to comment, you should do so.
Let's talk about some of the other issues that are on this regulatory agenda. And, you mentioned speed limiters as a hot button. Here's another one, broker transparency. Boy, you want to get some blood boiling. And what did we learn from the agenda, first of all? I mean, what does it tell us about where that's headed?
Well, I guess the good news is that at least they have stuck on that one too. That, like I said, speed limiter one is kept on being delayed. This one, previous agendas had targeted October this fall to move on a notice of proposed rulemaking of a way to address this issue. And at least out of this agenda, they're sticking to that. So the good thing is we're hopeful at this point that we'll actually see a proposal just in the next couple of months. If you look back, this is an issue that drivers and OIDA have been, advocating for a long time. OIDA made their petition back in 2020, and it was granted, I believe, last year, and still. Here we are, 4 years later, and nothing has been done yet. We won't know until that proposal comes out exactly what is in it. But basically, from OIDA's standpoint, is they basically need to enforce regulations that are already on the books, and those will help a lot of the issues regarding broker fraud immediately. And drivers, like I said, have been advocating for that for a long time. They made their point well known at a Mid-America trucking show just a couple years ago. There was a listening session there with FMCSA, and that thing would have lasted 2 days if they had allowed it to. I mean, there was a long line of drivers wanting to speak up. So.
Absolutely. Well, we got a little bit of time left for this particular part of the magazine, and I did want to get to automatic emergency braking systems because it is my favorite in the sense that it is not. It is one I like to talk about because it's something that just seems very, very I don't want to say silly because it's a serious matter, but dumb, is that the right word? I don't know.
I think one of the great things with this is just recently, Executive Vice President Louis Pugh spoke with Congress, and he was kind of talking about this. And, one of the points that he made is just because the technology works for cars does not mean it'll work for trucks. And that is really a way to sum this up, because they've already issued a final rule for light-duty vehicles as far as automatic emergency brakes. But if you hear from truck drivers regarding the false activations that they're having with trucks, and you think about the amount of weight and everything else, and how if you combine this with speed limiters, where you have obviously cars might be tailgating these trucks because they're going slower, and now you add in the truck suddenly hitting the brakes with not by the driver's choice, hitting the brakes because it sees a shadow or just picks up something.
A guardrail.
Yeah, anything.
Which has actually happened.
Yeah, and we've written about it before. I had an instance of a driver who basically nearly lost control of the entire truck because it was going picked up a guardrail on an icy road in Michigan in December at night, and almost led to a tragic crash there. Luckily, she was able to regain control of the vehicle, but it's a dangerous thing. That's one they're looking at maybe of January next year, but that's where we're at with that one.
Okay. Well, SJ, let's turn to you here, and you have a feature in the magazine, and this is about a guy who's been through a lot in his life. Tell us who this guy is and something about what he's been through.
Yeah, kind of talking about been through a lot. It seems like maybe a movie here. You got the trials and tribulations. This is an OIDA life member. Tim Guest is his name, and he's out of the Tennessee is where he's kind of located his home base there. I guess just kind of get to the end. He's 12 years sober to kind of put a wrap on it, but we'll kind of go through the details here. But basically, I mean, you looked from the outside when, this story began, at least when we spoke with him, how he began. It was, a stable job, a management position at a Harley Davidson, happily married, or so it seemed, kind of just had everything, in a row, and life was good. But that was not the story from inside. So, obviously from the outside, he looked everything together, but that wasn't the case as he told us. Basically, an alcohol addiction was kind of the major downfall here. Just couldn't get it together. Ended up resigning that, steady position there, and got divorced. And next thing he knows, he's homeless, living on the streets. And, kind of the crazy thing about this story is that was when, as he told us, he felt free. Like, he lost everything he ever had. He didn't have any money, not a dime in his pocket. And he says, I actually felt at peace. So, I mean, can you imagine kind of that being the mindset? Of course, that state couldn't last, the homelessness that is. So, he kind of had to, pull himself up and get it together. But just, that mindset is kind of hard to wrap it around, just being like, I actually feel free at this point. But so, like we said, kind of just fast forward, he, started trying to get things together, was actually kind of facing some criminal charges there, and was on his way to turn himself in to serve 5 years. And he was afforded an opportunity to join a veterans diversion program. So his service here in the military helped him out in this situation. He honestly said he didn't really want to do it for the fact that he felt like he might get trapped in a system where he wouldn't be, kind of have the freedom and the luxury to pick where he wanted to end up. But, I mean, obviously, prison time, diversion. It kind of makes the decision for you, right? Yeah. So he ended up going in the program, was able to obtain a CDL through this program, and kind of like start getting back on the right track. Of course, through it all, he's credited his faith. He found religion, or his faith in God is how he worded it. I want to put words in his mouth, but that was kind of, throughout the process, how he really, got to be. And with trucking, he was able to, as he said, continue, having reading time in the Bible while he's driving, or just kind of building that personal relationship for himself. So that was a big part of the process. And then, at one point, he kind of seemed like he had it together, but he ends up being $250,000 in debt. So it's kind of just like one thing after another with this individual. But, overcame it again. And in his case, a lease purchase actually benefited him in his situation. I know we've talked about the other side, but in this case, so a case by case scenario, of course. And just kind of wrap it up here. In addition to his faith, he credited big time OOIDA because he contacted several times when he wasn't even a member, and people said, "What do you need help with? Legal, financial, anything, everything." They were able to help him, and he says, "I got to join. There's no way I can't be a part of this association, with the help that they provided him." So, I mean, that's just to wrap it up. I mean, kind of Cliff's Notes there. It's a complex story. You can read more about it in the magazine, but definitely something that is kind of inspiring, to say the least.
Well, guys, we've run out of time, but I want to thank you very much for all the information, for giving us a peek inside the next issue of the magazine.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mark.
I've been talking with Mark Schremmer and SJ Munoz, and folks, you can subscribe by going to landline.media and hitting the subscribe button at the top right of the page, and this is all in the August-September issue.